So much of the art's value comes from the aura of the creator, and Banksy has done a phenomenal job at honing that whole world, and that's why his artwork sells for tens of millions of dollars. So if you don't already know, Banksy has only done about 2 interviews, and they are completely anonymous, and that's allowed for people to fill in the gap of his identity with their own perspective. So each person has looked at what Banksy has done and created their own perspective on who he is, what he represents, and they've put in all of this mental energy into who they think he is, and that has positioned him as a very impactful figure. An example I thought of was, think about the knights. The knights all know each other. They're all communicating, but the king is positioned in the king castle. Nobody knows who he is. The king's not doing daily vlogs. So that positions the king as this very powerful figure because people fill in the gaps of who he is. And Banksy has done a very similar thing, but in the art world. And that is what makes his art so valuable, is his aura that he's created for himself. And I really do think that it's not his unique perspectives on things that makes his art so valuable, because if Banksy were to come out tomorrow and it turns out he was just like a nerd, weird guy, I'm sure he'd probably still have fans, but his art would not be valued at the same level as it is. His art sells for the amounts it does because of the aura around his art. And I think it's really difficult to do that in today's day and age because of things like social media. Positioning yourself as this mysterious figure is only really accomplishable if you create something massively impactful but never release anything about yourself. But Banksy was able to work around that by creating things that are in your face. New York City, the most popular city, at least in the US. There would be these pieces that would be so thought-provoking and in your face, yet he is so not in your face. So it was a beautiful balance where people filled in the blank of his identity, which raised the value of the things that he produces. I was walking in the first room at the exhibition. It has all the way from 1998 to 2024. And on each plaque, there was a story about, this year he did this and that. And there's people coming up with all these different perspectives on what he meant by this and what he meant by this. It was really engaging for people. And he didn't have to produce a massive documentary on his perspective on each of these topics. But he created art that was thought-provoking, which brought the viewer in. There is a relation between short-form content that people produce for their personal brand and the artwork that Banksy did. They're both saying a message and conveying their opinion and their observation of the world. So a short form content maker is taking a video about their opinion on the war and what should be done about it. Banksy looks at the war. He creates a piece of artwork that shares his perspective on things. But what I notice differentiates them is that Banksy's artwork leaves space for you to think. So his are thought-provoking. The influencers are more, they're coming to the conclusion and they're saying, this is what's up, this is the answer. Whereas Banksy shares a perspective on things. He's not claiming that it's his or not, but he's sharing a perspective on things that isn't as direct as somebody saying it to you on a screen, their direct opinion. He's framing it from more of a thought-provoking angle. Now, he can do that as an artist, but the thing is, Naval has a quote about this, but you need to have conviction when conveying your message on something like social media, because if you were to babble on about, but this and that, but maybe this, but maybe that, and not have a strong conclusion of your opinion, then nobody's going to pay any attention to that. But Banksy has the advantage of creating a piece of art that people can look at and think about. And that it's much more difficult to do that in the social media world. I'm sure there's an angle to do that. I'm definitely sure there is, but just an interesting thought I had.